Welcome to True Wellness with Dr. D, the podcast where we explore what it takes to live with vitality, balance, and purpose. I am Dr. D, and each week I'll bring you powerful tools, inspiring stories, and expert insights to help you thrive in every area of your life. From health and wellness to mindset and navigating life's challenges, this podcast is your guide to creating a life of true well-being. Let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of True Wellness with Dr. D. Today is another real story from real people. Have you ever wondered what drives people to actually begin to make health changes? Like, what is that pivotal point that pushes you over the edge and says, okay, I've got to do something different? Sometimes it's just about the other people in our lives and what it is that they need and how we get to be an example for them. And today I am joined by Mandy Connor, who is a teacher, a coach, a mom, and a wife. And her story really is about making a difference, not just for herself, but for the people in her life, for her family, her students, and everyone. So thank you so much for being here with us today, Mandy.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about that. You went on a health journey with me and Self-Made Wellness, but what was that pivotal moment that you were like, gosh, I've got to do something different?
So actually, I was scrolling on Facebook and you happened to have like a free webinar that got posted out. And I was like, I got to try something different. I always say to my students, don't try the same thing and expect different results. It's just not going to happen. So I happened to get onto one of your webinars. I made time for it. I was almost late for it. And I ended up having you in my ear, obviously multitasking as moms do.
Yes.
And I was like, is this lady in my head? This is exactly what I needed. It was like everything kind of coming to full force. And I was like, exactly what I wanted. So I then made an appointment to schedule a meeting with you. I met with you and my husband, and at the end of it, I just was in tears. Like, this was exactly what you were an answer to my prayer.
Oh, thank you. What were you praying for? Right? What was that, those things that were gnawing at you?
Well, I mean, our body is the temple for God and to be a resident for Jesus Christ to live within us. So I was not doing a very good job eating the donuts and the chips. And I was like, no, I'm just not going to do it this week. And, and I was like, oh, why is this not happening? And I was in a state of despair and I just did not know where else to go. Very knowledgeable. I went down lots of rabbit holes. I knew what I had to do. I just needed the coaching to be able to do it. I also, in addition to that, the supplements were huge as well. But I also just needed someone to believe in the fact that like I had stuff going on and I just could not pinpoint it. And you guys were exactly what I needed. So.
Yeah. So was it like you were going around in circles trying to find solutions? I know a lot of people today, they're like, social media becomes that like thing. I have this like love-hate relationship with it, in all honesty. Everyone's like, well, you have to get on social media and you have to post this stuff. And I'm doing it, but there's a part of me that's like, I don't really want to do it, because what happens is people go out to like social media and they pick up a little clip, or they pick up this, they pick up that, and they think that that's going to solve all their problems.
Yeah.
And then they get frustrated, Is that where you were?
I feel like, yeah, I mean, I felt like I was a little bit further in. Like I did a lot with like women's health. I did a lot of exercises. Like it all made sense to me. Eating around our menstrual cycle, working out for a menstrual cycle, that all made sense. I was taking away food I had done prior to you. I had done like 4 elimination diets and I've tried all sorts of stuff and it worked, but it's still like I would cycle back and I was like, what is happening? And then I get into these vats of like just valleys of despair and depression. And I was like, I do not want this anymore. And like I said, like you were the accumulation, I guess you could say, of what I really wanted. You were like the go-to all-in-one package. And that to me was huge.
I love that. When you're talking about like the despair, what was it that you were going through, if you don't mind sharing? I mean,
Yeah.
whatever you're comfortable sharing. Like, what were some of the thoughts that you were having, and what were you thinking with respect to your health, to your life, to your family? Because I think our listeners, a lot of people are going through the same things, and sometimes they
Mhm.
just feel alone. Like, am I the only one going through this? And we don't realize that like there's other people out there who are going through exactly what it is that we're going through.
No, I think it's a great question. And I think for me, I was eating away my emotions. I had done intuitive eating, great workbook. It was awesome, but like it didn't give me the extra nudge, right? So like great workbook, great book, concepts, it was awesome. But for me, there was more to it. I had gained probably, I was creeping up to almost pregnancy weight at the time of my delivery. And I was like, what is happening? This is the biggest I've ever been in my life. And I just was in such like a cyclone of just everything. And I was wicked emotional. I was wicked cranky. My weight was high up. I had brain fog. My memories were kind of coming in and out. I just was like, just almost like secluding myself, almost like a hermit coming in, didn't want to get out of bed, barely wanted to like go to school, go to work. I didn't really want to do anything. I started with just withdrawal, but it was doing it creepily. It was doing it in little small things that I just was not paying attention to. And it would be like, oh, I can eat that cupcake. No, I can eat two. No, I can eat four. Now I'm like, what is happening? I would never like back in the day binge on that much. And now I'm like, I'm good. Like I'll take a bite and I'm like, I'm good. I don't need anything else. But it was a lot. Like your mind is just whirlwinding, and as a mom you're trying to like juggle so many things. It's not to be disrespectful to dads, but I think a mom's life changes far differently than a dad's does, because we have all that mental that stays up. And I know I've seen reels of like the mom brain versus the dad brain, like, oh, time to go to bed. And us, we're like, did we shut off the oven? Was the iron turned off? Like, were the dogs fed? Were the dogs let back in?
Yeah.
And there's so much mental anguish on women in general that we're so taught to take care of everybody else and not to take care of ourselves. So I literally at that point put my foot down and I looked at my husband and I was like, I got to do this. And he was like, but you're knowledgeable. And I was like, I know I'm knowledgeable and I appreciate it, but what I've been doing hasn't been working and I need something else. So we made it happen.
Talk about that a little bit. I mean, you have mentioned being a mom, and I know that you and I have spoken, and I know an important part of your health journey was really being able to look at your daughter and say, not just do as I say, but actually do as I do, being that role model for her and for your family. So tell us a little bit about that.
That's huge. I mean, I think like as a mom, like we want us to be the best version of ourselves. And unfortunately, especially with like our first kid, and she's my only kid, but with our first kid, we're always like they unfortunately have to see us go through some growth pains to get to kind of where we're at today. I'm sure if I had a second or third kid, they'd get a better version, of necessarily, but I don't think she would trade that at all. But she sees that growth. She sees like me fighting for what's right, and she sees me making those healthy decisions. Like she was a big drive in my decision because like at the end of the day, like I can't be a true role model to her unless I'm willing to do it myself. It's kind of like what Jesus asks us to do. Like we are to serve, not to be served. And for me, like I'm not asking you to do anything I'm not willing to do myself. So if I'm saying, let's put away those cupcakes for the week, let's have those on Saturday instead of like every day. I'm also willing to do that too. And making when she sees me doing better choices, like in choosing the apple or the banana or the pepper or the cucumber, she herself will make those decisions as well, because kids, they figure it out rather quickly. They're going to look at, you can say anything you want. It's through your actions that they want to see it.
Oh my gosh, they watch like crazy. And then you see them mimicking. And I've
Yeah.
said to my kids sometimes, do as I say, not as I do. Totally
And
guilty.
sometimes it
Totally guilty.
happens. Yeah.
The
100%.
truth is, we're human, right? And it's
Yeah.
like there's always sort of these evolutionary layers of ourselves that we go
Mhm.
through just as we, try to reach those higher and higher levels, which I think is personally, I think it's part of our journey here on this planet and in this life is to continue to learn and grow and unpeel those layers. And, I
Mhm.
think our health is one of those important layers. And I also think that our health impacts even our ability to begin to unpeel layers. It's like
100%.
Maslow's hierarchy, survival. Like
Okay.
we've actually got to feel good if we're going to start to try to
Yeah.
ascend, who we
Yeah.
are as a human being. So life is busy for you, right? You're a teacher, you're a coach, you're a mom, you have your husband, you have
Yes.
a household to, wash the dishes, do the laundry, clean the floors, like all of that stuff. A lot of people get worried that like their health changes or the things they're going to do to change their health, like they just, how are they going to fit it in? How are they going to manage to take care of themselves and all of those other responsibilities? I mean, what
Yeah.
would you, because you've done it successfully, like you have had this
Mhm.
amazing journey, produced amazing results for yourself and your life. And I know your husband and your daughter are so proud of you. But
Yep.
how did you do it? What would you advise our listeners on how they could actually get it in?
So, two pieces of advice is don't take no for an answer for yourself. Number one, actually, probably three. Every choice you make, you got to make the decision on: is this going to help me build my better body? Like in my head, like, okay, is this a choice to make my build my better body? And if it's
Yes,
not, give yourself some grace too. It's okay. Like it's okay to eat the cupcake every once in a while, but don't
right.
make it a habit. But for me, meal prep was huge. Huge. Like Sundays just became my meal prep days and I would plan out my breakfast and lunch from Monday through Friday and it would just be a go-to and I would just grab and go. So I wasn't stressing in the morning about like what that looked like. I do also try to eat around my menstrual cycle. So like when I'm during ovulation, like I'm throwing a lot more raw veggies in me than, normal.
Sure. Yeah.
And just because like my body likes it, but I'll be honest, like people look at me when they see my breakfasts and I'm eating like Brussels sprouts or arugula and some eggs and like some kimchi or something with like tomatoes, and they're like, "What?" And I go, "I prefer dinner for breakfast." Like I don't know
Oh
what to
my
tell
gosh. We're so fixed in our society. It's
you.
like
Yeah,
American society. It's like what's for breakfast? Bagels, sugary cereal,
yeah.
donuts, muffins, all of that stuff. I lived in Japan. We had miso soup for breakfast.
Yes,
You
yeah.
know, or
I'm eating
natto,
soup
which
for breakfast. Yep,
yeah,
100.
like I remember eating natto all the time. And natto is definitely becomes an acquired taste because it's like, it's
Yeah,
fermented soybeans. They're like slimy and
yeah.
they, it smells like bad feet, but I don't know. I came to really love natto. I can't explain why, but that's what we ate. There wasn't like we weren't having sweet stuff for breakfast, and it was
No.
like just part of the norm.
Yep. Brussels sprouts, man. Like the other day, like it's so funny. Like I like am so in tune with my body that like when I like Brussels sprouts are by far my favorite vegetable. But when I feed my body the food that I want, it almost like gives me a huge hug. It's like, thanks. This is what I
Yeah,
wanted.
that's so
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, like if you're feeding it like, cupcake or like a brownie or something or ice cream, like, oh my gosh, my go-to is ice cream. I don't even know the last time I had some ice cream in all honesty. Not because I'm like, ooh, voodoo on ice cream. It
Right.
doesn't make me feel good. Like I'll take a couple bites and then I'm like done. That's one thing I learned about the program I did with you is that like it's okay to have those bites. It's okay to have the cupcake, but like be in tune with your body and go, okay, how are we feeling after this? And I'll look at my daughter and be like, don't ever let me do that again. Like, we're
I
good.
still do that.
Yeah. Same thing with like chips. Chips were my vice. And I talk about that all the time about how chips was like my vice, like alcohol is to an alcoholic.
Yes.
And now, like, I have literally no idea when the last time I had a chip. Like, and I have no desire for it because, again, it kind of goes back to that mentality of, am I building this for a better body? Like, we were at a track meet yesterday, so I was coaching a track meet and kids brought donuts and I was just like, oh, okay, whatever. You do you guys. They're like, come on, coach, you gotta eat a donut. I go, no thanks. No, thank you. And they're like, come on, come on. One donut's not gonna hurt you. I go, but it's not gonna build my body that I want. No, thank you. And
Yeah.
And they're like, I go, guys, I practice what I preach what I practice. Every once in a while, I kind of almost like in the mindset of like 90-10 rule. Sometimes like I want that. Sometimes I want that cupcake, and that's gonna be okay, but I'm eating 90% of the time what I'm supposed to,
Right.
if not 95.
You wait for it to count, right? Wait
Yeah.
for it to count. Now, I know some people are listening and they're like, she eats Brussels sprouts for breakfast. How could she eat Brussels sprouts?
I
What
love
were you eating for breakfast before you started eating for your body?
You're lucky if I eat breakfast sometimes,
That
unfortunately.
happens too. Yeah.
Yeah, so if or it was like a couple like hard boiled eggs. But I've always, even before this program, I was always a veggie kid, always a veggie kid.
Love that.
With the program I did with you, though, it just reiterated why, my vegetables were so important. But I try to stress more of the cooked veggies than the raw. Um,
Mhm.
of course, during ovulation, I try to do more raw, but like any other time, I'm eating as much cooked vegetables as possible. And I didn't realize the impact. Like, I loved potatoes. Don't get me wrong, I still like potatoes. But like, I didn't understand the impact that mashed potatoes had on my body versus a baked potato had on my body
Sure.
until I went through the structure and I was like, whoa, okay, that I didn't like that one. I definitely like baked potatoes far better than I like my mashed potatoes. And I like, obviously, like sweet potatoes are my jam, but especially when I want something sweet. But I'm usually snacking on fruit, veggies, nuts. Like last night, I needed something, and I was like, I went downstairs and grabbed some nuts. But I try to go for good, wholesome foods. And Brussels sprouts, don't knock it till you try it. It's really good. If you want to air fry it, it's even better. But I don't know. I just love veggies every day. Like every day, 3 meals a day, I'm eating veggies.
And that's giving you all this energy and vitality, and you're doing all these things. And I mean, I got to ask you, do you have any stress in your life?
Yeah, times 10 or 100,000. Like, we've had a very stressful couple of years that's gone on with our household. Thankfully, I got God on my side on this one, but yeah, large amounts of stress. But I'm not stressing my body out anymore. I mean, I do every once in a while when I have my little treats, but otherwise, like, I'm really not stressing my body out. And we got to realize, like, stress is such like the silent killer, but we're doing a lot of that stress through lack of exercise,
Sure.
bad food nutrients that we're putting into our body, our
Yes.
mindset. Like the package I had with you, like, it was everything. I got to dive in deep with my girl Alice. She was awesome. We did some serious digging that I knew I needed. But it was huge. Like, I think it's the whole package. It's not just the food, it's not just the exercise, it's literally you and the wholesomeness of it. You got to do a lot of unpacking of the past.
Sure.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. What were some of the things that you've discovered about yourself along the health journey that were really pivotal in helping you make important shifts?
My mindset, like, my husband was like, "Oh, is this gonna be a waste?" I was like, "Nope." I was like, "Absolutely not." Like, I think the first conversation I had with you and Carissa was like, "Well, Mandy, what happens if you don't do something?" I go, "Then you have to like force me to do burpees," and I hate burpees. And not once did you ever have to force me to do it, because at the end of the day, I did all my work. I did my work. I ate my food. I drank my water. I was being very active. And I was just, because it was for me, I had kind of hit the rock bottom at that point. So
Okay.
there was no way up at that point except up. And I wasn't taking no for an answer. It became non-negotiable. I went camping, and camping is like, oh, I love camping,
It's
but there's
hard.
some bad habits that can come
Yeah.
in with camping. And my friends were like, "Oh, but Mandy," and I was like, "Nah, like next year you're gonna see me in that royal blue bikini on a paddleboard. You're gonna see what my body looks like." So like, I already had visions of what like my end goal is gonna be, and I already know. I've already picked out the royal blue bikini. Good stuff.
So is that, I love that, because I mean, I think a lot of people come in sometimes, or they begin whatever health journey they're on, and they already set themselves up for failure by saying like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this, or you know, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what those goals are. And it sounds like you like really powerfully set yourself up. Like, okay, number one, this is important to me. I have to get this done. Number two, I'm going to fight for myself. Because a lot of people, they don't do that, right? Sometimes we give up on ourselves, we quit. But it sounds like you said it's like there was no other option. It was this or life was not worth being here for, right?
Yep.
Like being here, being able to enjoy your family,
Yeah.
enjoy life. And then
Mhm.
having that goal be, and this is what I hear from you is like that power too of visualization. Like
Mhm.
you see yourself in that
Mhm.
bikini, you see yourself on the paddleboard. And so when it comes up to making choices that maybe you would have chosen differently in the past, you're like, oh, wait a second, I see myself there. And
Mhm.
what's the next thing on that journey? I mean, those are the things that I'm hearing.
Absolutely. I mean, and I've read a lot of people too, and I'm not gonna lie. Like, of course, the Bible is one of my favorites, but I'm a huge fan of David Goggins too. Like, some of those times in my head, I was like, he tells me to take control back of the governor, and I was like, yeah, I gotta take control of the governor. And like, there's a lot of things he says that really resonated with me, and I was like, yeah. But then I didn't have the nudge, and you guys were the nudge for me. And so I think it's important that you realize you're in a fight for your life at this point. Like, health is so important, and if you want sustainability, I even said it since I was pretty young. Like, I want to go for as long as I can without any medication. And that's not including supplements. I think supplements are a whole different ball game
They're
because
not medications
yeah,
at
but
all.
at the end of the day, supplements like are needed because we're like our soil's terrible. The food we're eating today is not as good as it was back in the day.
Yeah,
People can get mad at that all day, but it's unfortunately the reality of it. So for me, I want to go for as long as I can. I mean, I've got high blood pressure in my family, high cholesterol, diabetes, you name it. I got like the whole list, and people like, how are you sustaining this? I go, through choice, man. A lot of it's nurture versus nature. And I say to my students all the time, like, we have gates that are open in terms of like, we have gates in our like DNA. Like, I carry the diabetes gene. That doesn't mean the gate opens, but it
absolutely.
will open through choices that we make. Like, so if you continue to eat the cupcakes, sorry, cupcakes, that I'm throwing you off the boat. But if I continue to eat the cupcakes, that gate is just going to plug. And then at that point, you can't close back up the gate. And so you got to be cautious about that. So for like, my parents were on medication in like their late 30s, early 40s.
Right.
I'm in my late 40s, no medication, and I will go for as long as I can for sustainability there. Like today, somebody asked me if I was Brazilian today. I was cracking up laughing because it's almost every day somebody asks me. And two, they thought I was in my 30s. I was like, oh man, I love this. Like, this is
Like, thank
great.
you. I'll
I
take it.
appreciate it, and a
Thank
lot
you.
of it is they're like, how do you look so young? And I was like, oh, I watch myself and my son, but two, it's really about the food you eat,
Yeah.
and what you put into your body and what you put on your body. You got to be super careful with that stuff.
I know I mean, the truth is we do take these things for granted
Mhm.
because we're not educated. I know when you did our program, there's a lot, we provide a lot of education because we want you to understand all these things. But the truth is all the stuff that we teach should be stuff that's taught in school, like starting in elementary school, but
Yep.
it's not. Maybe
No.
it'll change one day,
Hope
but
so.
it's not. And then the other thing is we don't necessarily have those role models. Like you're a role model for your daughter because like my mom never knew.
Yeah.
We ate McDonald's and Carvel, and my mom worked at McDonald's,
Mhm.
and that was the way we grow up. She didn't know any different.
Yeah.
So the fact that you're out there and learning and then taking this knowledge and information and sharing it is just, it's so important.
Oh
So
yeah, it's huge. Like right now, as I coach indoor track, like I'm teaching the kids, like you got to build strength building, man. It's all about strength building. And they're
yes,
like, but I'm a runner, and I was like, even more so if you want PRs. And there was a little bit of a fight back on that, but at the end of the day, like almost every kid that I've worked with in terms of the distance kids has PR'd, which is a personal record from
yes,
like their previous season or previous race. And
right.
they're like, coach, and I go, you're welcome. Like, I'm trying to explain to you, if you want to get strong, you gotta build. And that's one thing. Another takeaway I had from this program is I knew strength training was important, but it became like a thing where I get like mad if I don't go to the gym. Like today I didn't get to the gym because like I had to do some errands with my kiddo, but that means I'm gonna have to double force it out tomorrow. But I love going to the gym. Like, I love the sensation it does. It helped, like, especially women weren't investigated till what, 1993, because we were too
Mhm.
complicated. Like, strength training is so huge. I don't care if you're in your 20s. I don't care if you're in your 30s, 40s. I don't care if you're in your 70s, 80s. You got to be doing strength training, and you don't have to do heavy weights. You just got to get in there and do it. Burn out that estrogen.
Yes, yeah, it's important. You were talking about your students
Mhm.
and how they all have their personal records, and so your students are measuring against themselves and
Yep.
moving themselves forward.
Yep.
And I think I mean, that's a really important piece of
Yep.
our journey because we don't all start in the same spot and we have different strengths and weaknesses. And so did you have in your what were your what were your PRs that you were looking to move the dial on? Because I mean, for all of us it's different, and people
Yeah.
who are listening, like, it's okay that it's different.
Yeah.
Maybe you can't do 50 sit-ups or 50 push-ups, but maybe you can walk longer or run longer, or like whatever it is. We all start at our same point. Or maybe like you said, Mandy, like maybe it's like, okay, well, I started with the potato chips, then I moved to the mashed potatoes, and now I'm at the baked potatoes.
Yeah, exactly.
Moving along the continuum there.
So for me, I think it became like just little like the brain fog was really annoying me.
Yeah.
And that was gone pretty quickly as soon as like a lot of my cleanup happened. And
Okay.
I went cold turkey. That first week it was like no sugar for a week, and I was like, okay. I mean, it wasn't too much of a big deal because I was more of a fruit person, so I was like super appreciated the fact that I could always have fruit. But for me, it was the brain fog. It was the weight. Weight was a driving force for me too. But like it got to the point where like the weight wasn't as like the biggest thing. It was like my hormones were coming back into alignment. I could tell in my menstrual cycle it was coming back into alignment.
Yes.
My brain fog was gone. My irritability was gone. Like my energy levels were going up. I'm just trying to think of everything. I had this like weird left ankle swell that was happening that I just could not pinpoint. And now I 100% have it pinpointed. Somebody was like, "Oh, your ankle," and I'd be like, "Ah, it's because there was soy in something I didn't realize there was soy in." So it became like trial and error at things. So for me, it's the little things. Like, of course, the weight's there. Like, I still have some more weight that I want to go, but I just, right now, and I know I talked to you about it, and Carissa. Like, I have to get my stress under realm,
Yes.
because my stress is like, whew, there's a lot going on in my life, and if I don't get my stress, if my body doesn't feel safe, it's going to hold on to
Absolutely.
that fat that I want to get rid of, but it's going to hold for survival reasons. So I'm
Yes.
not gonna lie, some days I'm like, I'm just gonna watch a rom-com. Like, I know I should probably be doing the dishes, but right now I'm reading my body right now, and it's saying watch a really dumb rom-com, and that's what I do. And I'm like, okay, I needed snack last night, so I went after some cashews. Like, you got to just really be in tune with your body and know your body enough to know what you got to do.
Yeah, and sometimes you're right. Sometimes we just need to stop, right?
Yep.
Sometimes we need to stop, we need to rest, and that's what our body needs. I mean, sometimes we have clients who come in and like maybe they're eating well and they're doing workouts and things like that, but their stress level is so high that they're not losing weight. And then their workouts are so intense that it's further pushing their hormones out of balance versus balancing it. And meanwhile, they're in this
Yep.
spiraling circle of being frustrated because it's
Mhm.
not working and it's supposed to be working. And it's like, whoa, we need to just calm down. How
Yeah.
about you don't work out for a week and let's see what happens as
Yep.
your body takes
Mhm.
the time to recover, you know?
Yep. We gotta listen and you gotta stay tuned to it. Like, I think that's what was happening for like, I mean, I work out with my track team when they need me to, because like I said, I'm not asking them to do something I'm not willing to do. But what's
Yes.
great is that here I am, like 3 times their age, and I'm, like, not even, like, losing any, like, breath on it. I'm not even, like, sweating bad. They're like, "How you doing this?" And I was like, it's just making it happen, you know? I think it's important that we take care of ourselves and we listen to what our bodies need, and it's okay
Yeah.
to not one thing is I had the all or nothing approach in my head,
Right.
which thinking it's not good thinking whatsoever. So if I didn't make it to the gym, I was like, I'd beat myself up mentally about it, and I'd be like, whatever, and I'd eat the chips, and I was like, what am I doing? So now I'm like, okay, I didn't make it to the gym, like, okay, I didn't make it today. Life got busy today. In all honesty, I probably could have made it to the gym. I just stayed in bed and read a book because I just really wanted to lay down and read a book.
Yes,
And so for me, I'm no longer beating myself up anymore. I'm like, all right, let's just make it up the next day, or let's do it. Let's go on this day instead of not going that day. So it's just a readjustment
I love
to your
that.
schedule.
I love that. I think that there is this, like, there is a line between like giving yourself grace and then also just letting yourself off the hook.
Yep.
And it's just knowing where you are on that line, right? Is it that you need grace, or is it that you're just kind of quitting on yourself? Because
Yep.
they're different. But when you, like you said, when you listen to your body and you really know your body's needs, then it does make the world a difference. When you can hear what I call little gremlin voices going off
Yep.
that are like, making up some excuse, versus like your body saying, hey, I just need to bring my cortisol down. Like, to be
Yes.
able to distinguish that is such a gift that you have really come to tune
Yep.
into. Yeah.
Well, it also helps that I have the Aura ring. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh, the feedback is important. So I'm
The
not a huge
feedback
fan
is,
of wearables, just because the
I know,
electromagnetics,
I
and
know.
we haven't found the perfect way to actually get them remediated. But truth be told, my sons are athletes, and their coach has them. They need to understand their calorie burn and their performance and what their recovery time is, and all of that. They
Yeah.
have to understand that so that they're not wearing down their bodies. So I'm like,
The balance,
sometimes.
uh, balance. Like, I got the Aura ring just I think before you, because I just was like, I need some feedback, and
Sure,
the
yeah,
feedback on it has been helping me to drive those cortisol levels down. That's when I'm like, okay, it's rom-com time, or it's, I do a lot of Bible study too. So, oh, it's Bible study time. Anything that's going to help me get into recovery zone for my body.
yes.
And if I'm feeding my body something it doesn't like, man, does it spike. Oh, it's like, oh, you're in a stressful state. Okay, note to self, let's not eat that again.
Well, people don't realize, if you
Yeah.
actually listen to your body,
Yeah.
if something works or not. There's actually, way before we had all these different tests for like IgG and IgA and all that stuff, like the sensitivity test, not like the full on allergies. What they would do is they would, for example, like you take a kid and they're trying to find out what the kid is sensitive to. They would simply have the kid write like their name, then they would have that food, and then they would have them write again. And you could tell the difference when their body was in that response. Like, it would be like really
Yeah.
messy, and it wouldn't, like, it's not intentional, but it's just part of, when our body has a reaction, it impacts things globally. So it's not surprising that your stress went up. And so with the wearables, I will just say, just for our listeners too, like,
Yeah.
having the feedback can be very helpful. Even like the glucose monitors,
Yeah.
that the wearables that people are using today, they can give you information. Just do it in the safest way that you can, right? So if you don't need to have it on all the time, don't have it on all the time. I know, like the Aura ring, you don't have to transmit information back and forth. You can just like hook it up and it will like download data, right?
Yep.
And you want to do it in the safest possible way.
Absolutely.
So, Mandy, I know a lot of people are like, how do I fit all this stuff in? Like, how did you do that? Because I mean, we have all these different priorities coming at us in life. Like, what's your recommendation for our listeners?
I know, because they'll be like, well, she's a teacher. She has the summer off. Yeah, but I didn't when I started the program. So I had about a month and a half worth
Uh-huh.
of school before I had the summer. And it was a lot. Like, you have to make the time. When I talk about that, it kind of goes back to that jar scenario I had chatted with you about a while back. And it was
Yes.
someone, like, I saw a professor do this online, and I was like, that is so real.
Yes.
But it's kind of like you have your like large boulders in your life, and those are like the most important things for you. For me, it's God, health, and family. Those are like my big boulders.
Yes.
And when I put those boulders in the jar, The little smaller rocks are the other things that creep into our life. Like, okay, the oil change for the car and the gas and the groceries and like hanging out with friends and all the other things that are important in our lives, but they're not the boulders. And
Yeah.
so those then have to go into the jar. And then there's like the other things that creep in, that like the stresses in our life. The dogs, like, whatever, the dogs are barking and they're annoying, whatever the case is, like those are like the sands, like the everyday things that happen that just kind of show up. The person cutting you off in traffic, to like Dunkin' Donuts not putting sugar in your coffee, whatever the case is. And so when you put the boulders in your jar, and then you put like the rocks in your jar, and then you put the sand, then you can fit everything in the jar itself. But if you choose to let the small things creep in,
Yes.
like you let the stress come in. So you put the sand in first, then you put the rocks, then you have no space for the boulders. And
Mhm.
so that impacted me a long time ago. And for me, my health journey, like I said, God, family, and health have always been my like top 3 boulders. And everybody's different. You just got to figure out what yours are. You could have 4 boulders, you could have 5 boulders. It really doesn't matter as long as you put those in the jar first. Because if you do that, then everything else can fit into the jar. And you could do it yourself. You're like, I'm going to go find 3 major rocks. And that's what I have. I have a jar somewhere in my house where I have my 3 core pieces in there. And then I have like my rocks, and I talk about that. And then I put the sand in it. And at the end of the day, like everything fits in them. And I'm a mason jar person, so it's in the mason.
Me
So
too.
like, yeah, look, it's in the mason jar. And it's just like, at the end of the day, like you got to make time for the things that are the most important to you. And like I said, health is super important. So
Yeah.
it becomes a priority. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I've had to adjust. Like, so I'll get up tomorrow morning. I'll be up at 4:30 in the morning. 4:30, 4:40. I'm gonna get dressed. I'm gonna go to the gym from 5 to 6. I come home. I'm gonna take a shower, and I'm gonna go to school, and I'm gonna teach the whole day, and then I'm gonna go coach practice until 4, and then I'm coming home, and then I got like Bible study. I got 2 Bible studies on Tuesday nights. And like for me, that's what fills me. And I make time for that. And people are like, how do you do all this? I got 4 jobs right now, in all honesty. But I do it because I got to carry the boat right now with the stress that's going on in our lives. And I'll continue to carry the boat because it's just what it is. But there's going to be a time where I'm not going to have to carry the boat. My
Right.
husband's going to take over for the boat moment, and that's starting to, that shift is starting to happen.
Yes.
Because things will happen in our lives, and you just got to kind of adapt and adjust. But if you continue to just kind of know what your 3 boulders are, or your 2 boulders, your 4, whatever it is, just make sure you always make time for that. And then the rest all comes into play. Or you just don't sweat the small stuff. You're like, person cut me off. All right, it's fine.
I
You
love
need to get there faster than me. I've always looked at it like God saved me from something. There was probably an accident I was probably going to get into if that person didn't cut me off. So I look at it in a different light.
I love your mindset, and I love your attitude to everything, not just your health journey, but to life in general. Because what I hear is that underlying belief that you believe everything is working out for your highest and best interest, even if the ground is a little muddy right now. It's like, well, it's muddy for a reason. It's going to benefit me, in my next steps. And yeah, like I haven't heard you complain not a single time, even in your choice of words. You're like, hey, I'm carrying the boat right now, but it's not going to be forever. And so I want to acknowledge that about you, because I think that is what makes that's what makes any journey in life easier, is
Mhm.
when we're able to focus on the positive, and we're able to focus on the things that are going really well, and we're not in that sort of negative victim, woe is me, life is happening to me, not for me. It makes a difference.
Huge. Gratitude is huge, man. Like, you just gotta, it's like gratitude is the best attitude. At the end of the day, you just gotta be thankful that, anytime somebody gives me a hard time, I'm like, listen, any day above ground's a great day, man. Like, people are fighting right now. And I'm glad I'm here, and there's a purpose. There's a purpose for all of us. There's a
Yeah,
reason that we're all involved in this life of life. And so we need to realize like what impact we are going to make each day by our choices, by our interactions. And it's just super important.
I love that. It is our level of, I think, also personal responsibility, like recognizing that my choices make a difference. And
Mhm.
it may not be that we always make the right choice, But if we recognize like, okay, maybe I didn't make the right choice there. And instead of beating ourselves up, like we take the next step forward, we don't yell at a baby because a baby falls down when they're learning to walk. We help them get back up and we help move them forward. Like if we just bring that love and compassion to ourselves and our own journey. And that's something that I hear from you. And it also sounds to you like, you've got this faith, like everything is working out for you. For you, it's God. God and Jesus are there. They're taking care of you. They're making it all unfold. And I think that's important to just be really grounded in whatever. I mean, for all of our listeners, whatever their specific belief is, but being able to have that space to really anchor. I think anchor is the word I'm looking for. Really anchor themselves in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if it roots you, it roots you. Like, I mean, with everything going on in my life, like my roots of faith were probably like, this big. Right now they're like ginormous. They're not going anywhere. Like, it's just like, so when the wind hits, like you might take some leaves off my branch. It might even like take a branch or two off, but like that tree's not going anywhere. I'm so rooted right now. I'm in like such a good mental place, emotionally, physically, spiritually, like that's the thing. It's like, it's not just the physical you got to take care of. It's literally everything. And it can so happen if you kind of think back to that mentality of like the boulders first and then everything else.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. This is such an inspiring interview. I'm sure our listeners are taking in a lot, seeing themselves in you and, what you've been through in your life and making the changes, and then just being inspired by who you are and the way that you've approached your life and the journey. I always ask our guests at every interview to share with our listeners, what would you say are 3 things that will help them move the dial with respect for their health and their wellness? 3 actionable things that they could take on after listening to this podcast episode.
Well, I think I gave some of it away, but the first one I would say is grace. And it is a fine line between letting yourself off the hook and whatnot, but it's okay to like, don't beat yourself up so much that you like will explode your own journey. Like, so 1, I would say grace. 2, I would have to say like, kind of like the airplane, right? We got to put our masks on first. There is no truer statement than that. We have to put ourselves, whether it doesn't matter what gender we identify as, you got to put yourself first on the health journey. Cause if not, like, it doesn't matter, because then your health deteriorates and then you can't be there for the people that are really important in your life. So I'd have to probably say that. And the third thing I would have to say is, not for nothing, strength training. Like, honestly, like if you're not sure where to start, don't start with cardio. Strength training is a jam, and then you get hooked on it. And then you're so excited to do it. And then you're seeing some great strides, but also you can kick butt with it as well. But I say strength training is like, it's so underrated and not a lot of people talk about it, but I think strength training is huge.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for the gift of your time, your knowledge, your inspiration. I know that this has been so insightful for me, so I know that it is for our listeners as well. So Mandy, thank you again for joining us. And with that, everyone, we look forward to having you join us for the next episode of Your True Wellness Awakening with Dr. D. This is Dr. D, reminding you to tune into your body, reconnect with what matters, and embrace the journey to true wellness. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's ready to redefine their health. Let's keep redefining wellness and empowering change together. See you next Thursday for the next episode drop.